Hi everyone, thanks for joining this Excel coffee break. So as you probably know by now, these Excel coffee breaks is just a sort of a one-on-one interaction between myself and you guys. And I'm pretending you're a client, I'm sitting at your desk, we've got a coffee together and we're just explaining some of the things in Excel that I do with my normal clients and just sort of explaining the reason why I've done things the way I have. So in today's session, what we're going to be doing is looking at the reasons why I tend to use by default index match as a combination for looking down a row, looking down a column, and then sort of choosing a different value, looking at the sort of subsequent value in a different column. Now, most people, when they start using Excel, they get used to using Vlookup, which does exactly that. Vlookup, vertical lookup, it goes down and then goes across. However, one of the things that you'll know when you sort of get a little bit more advanced is there's a bit more efficiency with using index match, and for me that's not so important as the control I feel that I have over it. So with index match I feel I've got more control, a little bit more stability, especially if I start changing the tables or the columns around, which I tend to do just as I sort of develop a spreadsheet. So I just want to sort of introduce you to using index match, and hopefully you'll see, like me, that it's just as easy as Vlookup. It's a little bit longer. It's not one single formula, it's two, but it's okay. Once you get used to it, then you'll find it's quite powerful. So let's get straight into it. So here we've got just a standard set of data, and what we want to do is we want to use Vlookup to actually go down the ID column. So we want to go down the ID column and then find a value. So we want to go down there, find a value in the year-to-date actual. So we want to go down and find a value in here. So the way that Vlookup will work is, I'll use a little pen here. So what it will do is you specify an area for it to look at. So this is in effect your subtable. Vlookup always needs the first column to be the point where it's looking up. So it's looking up a value. So what we want it to do is we want it to go down this column until it finds A06. And then what we want it to do is go across 1, 2, 3 to the fourth column and use that value. So it'll go from A6 across and it will take the value there. So let's actually do that and see how that works. Let me just get rid of this. So let's go and do that in our Vlookup cell. So I'm just going to type it in direct. So Vlookup. So the first thing it's going to do is what is the value. So the value that we want it to look up is going to be A006. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm actually going to say point it to that cell. So it's always looking in that cell for it. So we can just type A006 or whatever value we want to. You'll see that in a second. The next thing it will do is what is that table. So remember, as I said, you need to specify starting from the column that you want to look down for the value. So I'm going to choose all of that column there from C across to F. You could go further. It doesn't matter if you go further across, but it always has to include both of the columns that you want to look down as being the first column and the value you want to retrieve being within that range. So you can sort of have it as big as this if you want to. It doesn't make any difference. So the next item is the column index. So which column do we want to pull? So it's going to go down a column. So it's looking down for a value and then it needs to go across to the first, second, third, fourth column. So that's why you need it to be in that range. So it could be bigger because it will just ignore those ones. It goes across to the fourth column. And then the one that always tends to get people is the true false at the end. So true false. So nearly every time in most situations, nearly all the situations I've used, it's always false. You want to find an exact match. You want to find the first exact match. Some people will use the approximate match, but I never have really. And just to close brackets. Now it's going to do NA because remember what we did was we asked it to look in I3 for the value. We haven't got anything in there. So let's go into I3 and we type in A006. And there you can see. So it's done exactly that. So what it's gone down here, found the value, and it goes across to the 1, 2, 3, 4th column. So, and there it has found the 19,000. So that's sort of the way that Vlookup works. Now, that's really useful, except what happens if you start moving columns around? So if I sort of move my C column around, you can see that the value here has changed. So let me just do a Control-Z and go back. So if I move this column around and look at the year-to-date value actuals that we did our Vlookup, you can see it's changed. The reason why it's still looking at the fourth column. So now the fourth column is actually looking at the budget column. So that is one of the issues that you have, especially if you do a lot of changes in your tables. You always have to think, okay, I've got these VLOOKUPs, are they looking at the column? Now you can be a little bit more dynamic and get it to always sort of check which column it wants to do it, but again that's adding complexity. And one of the things I find with using index match is that you don't have to worry about the complexity, you build it in straight away in a very simple way. So how does index match work? Well, index match works in a similar way, except you do it in two discrete actions. First of all, let's look at index. So what we want to do is the idea of index is it will go down a list or across a list. So in our case, it's going down a list. So we're going to say in this list, go down and find this value. Or going down and take off this value rather, sorry. So let's have a look at that one. So this, if I get rid of this, so you can see in here, do it straight away, index. So the first thing is asking me what is the array. Now that just means the range that you want to pull off. So I'm going to say I want to pull off everything in here. Now I could choose the header. If I choose the header, you're going to think that is the first item. So I could choose a header if I wanted to. So I want to choose everything down in here, or so I want to choose everything down in there. Remember we're doing A006. So if we were to find down that value, it's looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's falling down the seventh item because we're including in the range that first item. Just similar as if we choose this one, the whole column is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So always think about where when you're specifying the array, what your starting point is. But we're not going to have to worry about that when we do match, and I'll explain why in a second. So let's just choose everything down there. So we want to have in here, and we want to pull off the seventh item. So comma, and then ask for the seventh item. What is the row number? And there you can see what we've got is it's gone down and it's pulled off the same value. So that's great. So we can see that you use index. What index will do is it will go down where you specify, and it goes down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if I choose my dots right. So you can see how it sort of works. The index is working, just goes down and it pulls off a number. So that's all right, but now let's look at match. I'm just taking them separately at the moment. So match will go down and finds a number and it returns the position of it. So let's look at this in action. So what match will do, in fact let me just draw it first. So what match will do is we're going to specify it over here now, and it says go and find, and I'm going to specify A006. Go down and find A006, and it knows because I started in this row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to return the seventh value. So let's have a look at this. So here we're going to use match equals match. And what is the lookup value we want to do? Now I'm going to specify straight away this one in here. So I3, so I don't have to type it in. And the next item is what is the array? So the range. Then when you see array in using Excel, just think a lot of the times of just think of it as in most instances as a sort of a range of cells, a sort of a collection of cells. So we're going to go down here. Again, you can choose as many as you like as long as it's got everything that you need in it. So we're going to go, and just as we did with the year-to-date actuals, we're starting on the first in the header row. So we're going to go down in here, and the next item is you've got a similar like the true/false you had in Vlookup. It's a little bit more dynamic now, because this one you can specify with less than or greater than. But again, I always use an exact match usually, in sort of invariably 99.9% of my cases. So most cases I use a 0, which is the equivalent of a false in a Vlookup, an exact match. And there you can see 7. Now it's done in currency. Let me just get rid of currency. So you can see it's found the seventh item. So it's gone down here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we specify that range, and it says, oh, A006 is the seventh item. Now let's consider that with index. So this is going down, and we said pull off the seventh item. So we've got the value here that or the index point that we want to do that we use in the index formula. So we can combine those two in a very easy way using index match. So what index match will do is it says, go down in this column in here and pull off this value that is in the same position that you found here. So what it's doing is it's taking two discrete ranges. So it's not taking a big block of rows of cells. It's doing it in two distinct actions. So let's do that, combine that together. So here we're going to do, so let me just copy the same formula. I'm just going to, so it saves me typing. So remember that we've got in here, so we've got the same value. So if I just hit enter, you can see it's doing exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same formula. But what we want to do now, instead of using that 7, we want it to use the results of this function. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to take the match bit. I don't need the equals. You only have an equals at the very beginning. And I'm going to copy. So I'm taking that whole formula, and I'm going to replace 7 with that whole formula. So it's doing index, blah, 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 and then instead of 7, we're using the match function. And if I hit enter, it's returning that value. So if I were to change this to 7, we'd expect everything to align still. And it does. So this one, now this one is obviously not because we were specifying a number, a specific number, so don't worry about that one. But this one and this one changed, so they're all perfectly in line. Now the benefit is if I move this around, this one is still staying in the right place. So I can insert columns, I can remove columns, I won't have to worry about it because this index match is specifically looking at 2 defined columns, whereas Vlookup is looking at a range. And of course, if you insert, remove columns, that range is compressing or expanding accordingly. So in that, let me just put it back to how it was. So in that way, index match is very useful. So let me just build that up. Exactly the same thing. I'm going to build it up by hand this time. So I'm going to say index. So on the index, where do I want to go down to get my value from? So I want to go down in this column to get my value, comma, and then which row number do I need to go to? And I do that by defining by using the match function. So match. So I'm going to go straight in, type in match, open brackets. What value do I want to find? Well, I want to find that value there, and I want to find it in this range. And I want it to be an exact match, 0. Close brackets to close that match function off, and then close brackets to close the index function off, and hit enter. And so if I change everything now, then that's fine. The only definition you have to really worry about is the fact that these ranges start at exactly the same point. They don't have to, and they have to include all of the numbers. So similarly, if we were to do the same thing with the whole column, that's fine. You can do exactly the whole column. Again, that's a common practice. It makes it nice and easy. You don't have to worry about things that are going up and down, etc. So let's do exactly the same thing as a final thing, doing index. Now, what array do we want to look in? We will look in the whole column this time. Comma, match, because we want to find which position we want. So we want to find, again, in this whole column. So as long as you're consistent between your column positions. And what, sorry, I had to do lookup value, didn't I? So lookup value is this one, and we're looking in column C. And then the next item is a 0 for an exact match. Close brackets to close off the match, and then close brackets to close off the index function. And there you go. So you've got exactly the same thing. One of the functions is just looking at this range, and another one is looking at the entire column. So again, but it doesn't make any difference. I can move things around, and I'm not going to be impacted, whereas the Vlookup is, and you have to always consider that one. Well, I hope that was sort of pretty useful to sort of just go through some of the power of index match, how you can use it, and the reason why I tend to use it. It just makes it a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more secure, and I feel like I've got more control over it. There are some other benefits as well. As you get really huge spreadsheets, it's more efficient. It's only looking at 2 rows, whereas the Vlookup is across the entire range, and especially if you want to sort of to have that control with columns, then it can get really sort of quite sort of intensive in its processing that it needs to. So it's a good habit to get into using index match by default. So with that, thanks for watching. As always, give it a bit of a like, thumbs up if you like the video. Please subscribe, then you see all the new videos as they come out, and share. So share around to all your colleagues and let them feel like I'm sitting at their desk giving them a little chat over a coffee time. Cheers. With that, thanks for watching. Bye now.